Hi, this is Guru Pashupati, and this is my story. It's a long story, so take your time listening to it. I've tried to compress an adventure of 4 decades without losing any of the valuable lessons. If you make it to the end without skipping any part, you will receive these lessons too. Why has everyone lost their happiness? I was 4 years old when I started to realize that the people around me are never happy, and I was wondering why. Because as a child, I was happy, and I thought it's not so hard to be happy. I never wanted to lose this happiness. And because of that, I started to search for ways in which people lose their happiness, even before I was 10. One of the glaring ways that people lost their happiness but did nothing to remedy it was the lack of money. Another was conflict, and they were helpless to avoid it. So I gave up conflict and determined that I will learn how to make money. When I went to school, teachers were surprised at my loss of interest in engaging in conflicts. Since I had nothing to cry about, I began to read a lot of books and I became very intelligent. Whatever I did it as if I'm a professional. Like playing cricket. Whoever had me on their team would win the neighborhood matches. When I received a cycle, I was the best at it, and I learned to execute tricks that other kids didn't know how to do because I refused to be unhappy. I started to excel at things, and this used to irritate all the kids. Soon they ganged up against me. Meanwhile, I asked my father to enroll me in my first yoga class when I was around 9 years old. I was hoping to get some superpowers like Hanuman and fly away from the rejection of my peers. The first Siddhis. My father was practicing yoga at the time at a place called Bihar School of Yoga. So our house was filled with yoga books. And later, my father initiated me into the practices of Sri Vidya. I kept chanting the mantra and I started to develop psychic senses. I was able to see things that were invisible to other human beings. In those days, people always frowned upon Siddhis. They thought that if you were clairvoyant, if you could see people's auras, or if you could hear their thoughts, or if you could predict the future, or if you could just enter the room, smell it, and know what happened there, you were an evil tantric out to kill everyone. One day, I got a dressing down from my father for my psychokinetic ability. He had kept milk to boil, and he heard it rising, and he dashed to switch it off, but he saw it switch off on its own. Because of my yoga practice with tanmatras, I was able to imagine it switched off, and it turned itself off. I thought my father would be delighted, but he was mad at me. He said, Siddhis lead to ego, and you'll become an egomaniac, trying to destroy everyone else. But he wanted to know which practices gave me the Siddhis. I told him, and he told me never to practice them again. And because he was my guru, I honored it. Everybody was on a trip to attain moksha and become one with God. But for me, being one with God seemed like death, and I was not interested in that. Liberation is for losers. I wanted God to be there, of course, to support me, but I didn't want to become one with God. What would Shiva do being one with me? How will he then shower his grace on me? It made no sense to me to be God. I wanted to be of value to Shiva. I wanted to have such an entertaining life that he would be charmed and tickled and entertained. I wanted to make Shiva smile in delight at my intelligence and inventiveness. How else could he love me and send me his grace? Obviously, he sent me here for a reason. I wanted to build a life that was so attractive and beautiful that it made Shiva exclaim from the heavens. And that's what I got engaged in. I strove to become excellent in art, martial arts, studies, whatever I found myself capable to do. I gave myself permission to become masterful at it. This was my thing. Seeking real education. And then I figured out how to escape school. My grandmother told me that it was okay to not go to school, but it was not okay to get caught. And so I figured out a way in which I could get out of school without being caught. Then I worked in many places, and for me, work became a very spiritual activity. It became the only spiritual activity which I felt exceeded the power of chanting Sri Vidya mantras and developing Siddhis, because I had the joy of serving someone. My very first job was as a cycle repair assistant in a cycle shop. And in this job, I saw the glow of happiness on people's faces when I fixed their cycles. I had never been able to make anyone anything but scared with my Siddhis. And then I started thinking, what more can I fix in people's lives to make them even more happy? And that gave me a lot of joy and gave me a sense of purpose to be able to serve others. So I progressed rapidly. I did many jobs. And finally, after 4 or 5 different kinds of jobs that I tried while not going to school, at the age of 13, I got a job in an electronics factory. They were manufacturing UPS inverters. My parents were into a similar business, so I had some training at my father's factory. So I was one of the best workers. I would assemble 5 UPS inverters in a day, and they would pay me 120 rupees per assembly. I was making 15,000 rupees a month in 1980, which was a lot of money. In my first job, I was getting 250 rupees for the whole month, and this was certainly a big step up in just a year. I soon realized that my boss was paying the sales guy 500 rupees per sale of the UPS inverter that I used to assemble. I spoke to the owner about this. He's just talking, but I'm working so hard, and you pay me this measly 120 rupees while you pay him 500 rupees? What's going on? He said, listen, if you want to go sell. That's more valuable to me than you making it, because I can get anyone to make it, but not everyone can sell. I said, all right, I'll try it. He gave me a kit. He gave me a UPS and a battery. I was supposed to haul it on a two-wheeler and go sell it, but I only had a cycle. So I said, I'll not be taking this. I'll make the sale without this. He looked certain that I'll fail and come back, and that made me decide to prove him wrong. I went straight into thought, who can I serve? I knew from experience that Banias can calculate their losses and would be keen to do the maths of why investing in the UPS is going to be profitable. Baniyas are a merchant community from the west of India. I call them the GSM network, which stands for Gujarati, Sindhi, and Marwadi. Together, they form the backbone of business in India. They are the most enterprising, and they understand numbers. So I went to a Marwadi-owned sari shop, and I spoke to the owner. Let's calculate how much money you lose during a power cut in 1 hour. He did the calculation, and it turned out to be 8,000 rupees. There was a power cut at least once a week for an hour. You're losing 8,000 rupees into 4, which is 32,000 rupees every month. He said, yeah, I didn't realize. I said, all you have to do is buy my UPS. It costs only 5,500 rupees. Maybe you should buy 2. And he did. One for himself and one for his brother's shop. I was so happy. Working 8 hours, I used to make 720 rupees, but now in 10 minutes, I had made 1,000 rupees. It was an incredible feeling of freedom. I wanted to scale this. I wanted to see if I could avoid even the 10 minutes. So I taught this method of sales to 4 of my friends, and they found it very easy. They said, that's it, and we get money? And I said, yes, smiling. They were extremely happy with 200 rupees per sale, and I was keeping 300 rupees off of their sale. They started making the sales, and they were on fire. They were working really hard. Soon, I stopped going for sales. I didn't know what to do with all the money. I used to receive it in cash, so I had to hide it somewhere. And then I couldn't put it in any bank account because I'm a minor and I would need my parents' permission to make an account. So I recruited an 18-year-old I knew to become the proxy owner of my sales company, and we opened an account in his name and kept the money there. I threatened him with death if he spent any more than 5% of it, which was his share, for the service of being an adult and opening a bank account. Meanwhile, it hit me that education hasn't taught any of my classmates how to earn a living, but I've taught 4 kids and 1 adult how to earn a living, and that's better than what the entire education system did. So I decided I'm not going to continue in the education system. And I even decided at some point that I'm going to make the education system obsolete. I didn't know when, but I was outraged at what they were doing to kids like me. I suddenly realized why every adult I knew had money problems. Kissed by fortune. My journey of entrepreneurship continued with more ups than downs. Shiva had sent me many opportunities to entertain him, and I would launch ventures by saying Om Namah Shivaya and do the business very consciously. And great fortune did follow. I started learning from one of the world's best entrepreneurs. He was from Hong Kong. I bought his book at a big book fair. He was so impressed with me that he offered to mentor me for free by correspondence. Email wasn't invented yet, and so I used to snail mail him with my business problems, and in a few weeks would be enthralled by his elegant solutions. He was always glad to clear my head about a lot of things. Because I got this really good mentor, I was able to grow all my businesses just by picking his brains and using mine. The problem of loneliness. Making money became second nature to me, but Shiva obviously wanted more entertainment. And after a point of time, I started to have this problem of loneliness. And that was really one of my downfalls, because to fill that void, I had imagined that I have fallen in love, and I got married to the same girl who I had fallen in love with. But it didn't work out, because that was not love, and I didn't even know what love was. I didn't even know what this void of loneliness was and how to fill this void. I was on really good terms with my customers, but it was a surface level talk. There was nobody I could talk to on a deep level and get connected to on a deep level. And that's all I really wanted. I didn't want the whole burden of marriage. But instead of a deep connection, what I got was depression. The dream. However, something very significant happened during the second year of my marriage. I was sleeping next to my ex-wife and there was a vivid dream that I had. In this dream, I was walking up a mountain, but it was a very strange mountain because it had steps carved into it, strewn with a lot of naked human skins of both men and women. It was hard to avoid putting my foot on them. I knew they were sadhus because they had rudraksha malas and bracelets. I walked all the way up respectfully, trying to avoid stepping on the skins. Eventually, I got to the top of the mountain, and there was this blinding light, and some kind of platform was there. I kept looking. I distinguished inside the blinding light, there was a girl, and this light, in fact, was emanating from her. She was just about 12 or 13 years old, and I was just looking at her, transfixed, because she was extremely beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful person. I knew this cannot be a human being. I knew that this was a goddess. I didn't know what goddess she was, but she looked at me, smiled so warmly and said, "Will you teach yoga?" And I said, "Yes, of course. I'll do anything you say." And she said, "Very good. I'll arrange it. You can go now." And I woke up. I was very excited. I woke up my ex-wife and I told her what happened, but she was less than excited that I had woken her up. And I soon forgot all about it. The Guru, Mahavatar Babaji. Years earlier, when I was 13, I had become really hopeless due to the unrelenting bullying by the older kids who were mad at me for being good at everything. I then came across this enigmatic person who was a Gurkha, and he told me that he's an assassin, and he's hiding in my hometown Bangalore after killing some people in Meghalaya, and he offered to teach me how to fight. The boys who lived in my neighborhood were some kind of gangsters. They had knives and other weapons, and they would make me do all sorts of ridiculous things. Like one day they would kick some cow dung and make me lick it off their shoes. Another day they would ask me to sit inside the gutter with rats for company while they play cricket. They would make me steal things from others' houses, and they would slap me and hit me on the head a lot. I couldn't fathom why they were so mad at me or why they felt so angry at me. I couldn't understand it. But I found out that they were mad because I was really good at sports. And whenever we played games together, I would just win. And instead of appreciating that, or at least being inspired by that, they started to bully me, and it became really bad. News of this spread among kids, and the kids at school would call me all the abusive nicknames that these gang members hurled at me. It was getting a little out of hand, really. So I asked my father to enroll me in a karate class. And I learned karate for a year. And then I put up a really big, brave fight with them. After winning gold medals and all the state tournaments, I thought I would be able to beat them up, but I couldn't. They overpowered me and they beat me up so bad that I was having a really hard time recovering from all that emotional pain. So I lay in the gutter where they threw me with my hands on my eyes and I was crying. And I tearfully begged Shiva, I just want a solution to this. I just want a solution. And this man came to me with a very big shiny forehead and he said, You fought bravely. I'm going to teach you how to fight. Come to my house at 5 in the morning. Here's where I live. And he gave me his address written on a piece of paper and he told me how to get there. At 5 the next morning, he was sleeping. He was doing the job of a night watchman at that house. I was asking myself, did I make a mistake coming here? But I wasn't going to give up because he was my only hope of surviving this mess. And I knew that I had to learn something or do something that cannot be learned in martial art classes because that stuff they taught me, it didn't work. Because it's all practiced against one person. I had gotten beaten up by 10 people the previous evening. I went again in the afternoon and I caught him there when he was awake. And I found a dog leash in his room. I put the dog leash through the window with its tail hanging out the window and I asked him, would you kindly put your ankle into the neck of the leash and go to sleep tonight? Because if you don't wake up, I can yank your foot at 4:50 in the morning and then you can start teaching me at 5. To my surprise, he smiled and agreed. The next morning, I hoisted his foot up in the air and he trained me. Over the days, he taught me astonishing secrets about combat that I wouldn't expect from anybody. And I asked him, how do you know all this? He said, I know fighting because I learned to fight by fighting. I didn't go to a martial art class like you did. I said, really? He said, yes. If you want to learn something, you've got to learn it from someone who's doing it. How many fights have your teachers been into? I said, I don't know. They never mentioned any. I'm guessing none. He continued, it's easy to get a black belt, but it's not easy to learn how to fight. So if you really want to learn, I'm going to teach you and train you in the foundations. I'm going to make your knuckles hard as stone. I'm going to make your feet, your shins, your elbows, your forearms, and your head as hard as stone. And those are your basic weapons. And then I'm going to teach you how to use external weapons as well that you can carry around with you. And then I'm going to go and ask you to fight. So if you like the schedule, then stay. Otherwise, you can get lost. I was scared. Wow, this sounds really scary and dangerous. But I stayed. And he trained me. After training me, he took me to shady places. And he would point out to some strangers and then vanish. He expected me to pick a fight with them, fight them, and come back and report to him about what I had done. At the end of the training, I beat all my bullies to pulp with great satisfaction and also filed police complaints against them under all the sections possible. I withdrew the FIR after getting a written promise that they would never assault me again. Mahavatar Babaji told me decades later that he was that mentor. He had taken the form of a Gurkha and he came to mentor me because I had cried out to Shiva. Mahavatar Babaji came to my house as a sadhu when I was 18 years old. By the time I was 18, I had learned how to hold my breath for 10 minutes or so. I had practiced a lot of pranayama to gain these skills. But I wanted to know what would happen if I passed the 10-minute limit where my body was giving up. Just curiosity. And also, I was bored of my life. I thought, what is this? I'm already an entrepreneur. I make money. I'm not interested in getting married. And I don't know what else is here in this life. This life is too easy for me, I thought. And I wanted more challenges, more difficulties. I didn't know that we could get diseases. I didn't know that we could fall in love. And I didn't know that we could have all these complications that would make our life interesting. But I just wanted to quit this life thinking, yeah, this is like baby stuff. And I was too proud of my abilities. I held my breath. And I just continued holding my breath. I did indeed come out of my body, past the point where I think my brain lost oxygen. I saw myself as separate from the body. I was formless. I could sense everything, but I was completely formless. And I was sensing that this body was dying. So I started to think this body shouldn't die. That's all I thought. And then the bell rang. And Mahavatar Babaji was at the door. And my father was saying, whatever you're selling, I'm not buying. I was immediately pulled back into my body. It was really painful inside my body, but I couldn't concentrate on the pain because this man standing at the door was simply too beautiful and radiant. And I was like, who is this person? I've never seen such a happy human being. And I was wondering, how can I be happy like him? And I was just looking at him, completely surrendered to his divine presence, and I had no thoughts in my mind. He told me, don't call me now, I'll come when the time is right, and he left. So all of these incidents made me believe that something phenomenal is going to happen. I didn't know what. And even when I got married, I told my ex-wife, there was a sadhu who said he'd come back for me, and if he comes back, I will go with him. I wouldn't be married to you anymore. And she said, okay. She didn't really want to get married either. Her family was forcing her, and that's the reason we got married. And he did come. And this time I was doing the last rites of some people at Varanasi, and I was just so depressed, and I had lost all meaning in life. Making money was not really what I wanted to do in life. What to do with all the money? I came to the ghat. Manikarnika Ghat is a burning ghat. I watched all the skulls of the corpses pop because they stuffed their noses and ears with cotton. And I thought, is life so shallow? Is this the purpose of life? Whatever you do, you end up dying here and have your skull explode. I was having this Buddha moment where I got really depressed. And I didn't want to go back to my host's house or any house. And I just sat there the whole night. I called them and told them I won't be coming. They said, okay, but are you going to spend the night at the ghat like a madman? But they let me do that. And I was sitting in the ghat waiting. The mosquitoes were eating me, but I was not bothered, just waiting. I don't know what I was waiting for, but I knew I was waiting. And sure enough, the thing I was waiting for came. Some 7 or 8 sadhus were walking towards me, and one of them was glowing like the sun in the middle of the night. I said to myself, this is not ordinary. And I came to him out of respect and I said, Baba. And he said, have you waited long? Let's go. I have a lot to teach you. Go back home now, close everything that you've got going, your businesses, your marriage, close everything. Do something with the money and come to me. Give up everything and come along with me. I said, smiling, yes, I'm really ready for that. And so I gave up everything. I had 2 businesses going on. One was a corporate training company and the other was a martial arts company. And I closed both of them. I got divorced, I made a settlement, and I threw the remaining money into a fixed deposit and then I left. It took me 1.5 years to come back. When I was in the mountains with Babaji, so many incredible things happened. Some that I'm allowed to speak about and some that I'm not even allowed to speak about. And then I realized once and for all that I am not this body. I am the immortal, formless Jiva. And Baba told me, now you have to forget everything you learned and go back. And I said, wait, I'll go back, but why do I have to forget everything I learned? And he said, you have to. Because you need to go back and live your life consciously now. You've always been enabled more than the others. Now you're going to feel all the emotions that you didn't feel as a child, all the misery you didn't feel even as an adult. You're going to learn how to get in and get out of that. Will I at least remember you said this? No, he said, smiling. And then he asked me to leave, and I left. When I was in the mountains, my body had turned into a body that does not need to sleep, breathe, or drink water. It was a body of light. And I thought, I'll at least have that body. But as I kept walking back, I kept forgetting everything that I've learned. And by the time I reached back into civilization, surviving a very dangerous journey through the jungle, I didn't remember anything that I'd learned. Still solving loneliness. But I remembered one promise I had made to Babaji. He had said, I don't want to teach yoga to anyone unless they're going to continue the lineage and teach yoga. I said to him, I am going to teach yoga because I promised a goddess. He said, this goddess is Bala Tripura Sundari, and she is the head of our akhada, Triloka Khada. I now only remembered the promise to the goddess, but I didn't remember any yoga. So I came back and I was trying my best to learn yoga from the Upanishads and the Vedas, and Babaji sent me some thought messages that I should go and learn the Vedas from a guru in Goa. So I went there and started learning the Vedas from him, and eventually in 13 months I mastered the Vedas and Vedic rituals, which usually takes 13 or 14 years. Somehow that happened. That was grace. And then I was full of the knowledge of the Upanishads. Then I got guided again. Mahatar Babaji came in a vivid dream this time and asked me to go to a spot in Veliangiri. He said, just wait there. I did that. I just remember a Siddha called Amritanandanath met me there, and he said, now I'm going to prepare your mind for samsara. I said, great, I could use that. He proceeded to give me all sorts of concoctions that he would make from herbs around us. He also had magical powers that I'm not allowed to speak about. He kept me there for 3 weeks, and I don't know what really happened in those 3 weeks, because he would give me something to drink or smoke, and I would be out of my body. Everything that happened outside the body. It seemed like my subconscious was learning a lot, but I didn't know what I learned. After 3 weeks, I came back and I was wondering what to do. I got depressed again, and it was really bad this time. I started getting addicted to alcohol. One day I had to be brought home in an auto rickshaw after crashing my bike and then somehow picking up my bike, reaching the bar and drinking some more. I had to be taken out of that bar unconscious and returned to my house. I didn't remember any of this in the morning, but sure enough, my bike was damaged and it was parked in front of the bar. And everybody was scolding me, saying, why do you drink so much? However, I couldn't stop drinking. I left Mysore where I was living, and I went to Pune, hoping to make a fresh start and stop drinking. But it continued. My body was strong because of all the martial arts and yoga practice. I started to teach martial arts in Pune, but I wasn't finding anyone who was capable of helping me scale the business. It wasn't just me who was depressed. It was a pandemic of depression. All around me, it made me even more depressed. Why was nobody ambitious anymore? And because of that, I still had the problem of loneliness. And to solve that problem of loneliness, I tried falling in love again. And this time when I fell in love, I went to live with that person in the mountains. I thought I had found my soulmate because she loved the mountains as much as me. And she turned out to be someone who was chronically ill. Even I got a lot of diseases because we were just depressed. All I did there was drink cheap alcohol, spoil my liver, and get very sick. I had liver fibrosis and urinary tract infection, and my lungs were working at low efficiency because of smoking so much. And I had 13 conditions, including failing kidneys and 2 autoimmune diseases, Hashimoto's thyroiditis and type 1.5 diabetes. But she got thyroid cancer. And then I said, man, I have to spend my time learning. If I don't learn like I used to learn when I was a child, I'm going to die. And so I started learning. And I just put my faith in Shiva and I kept learning. I ran out of money. All the money I had saved was over to fund our treatments. I started a podcast and I started selling courses through my podcast and made 8,60,000 in the first month. So I kept doing it all alone. I was supporting this person, and finally we went to Pune because it became unbearable to live in the mountains. It was so much work to go to the hospital with her in the mountains, and they didn't have the scanning equipment we needed to monitor her condition. Meanwhile, a student of mine had completely lost her health, lost her mind, and even lost her marriage, and she came with a kid to Pune. So the three of us and the kid started to live together. And we started a company, which was, believe it or not, a health consultation company. I have quit the board of directors, but my student made it big in that business. We then went for treatment to Himachal Pradesh, and things fell apart between the CEO, who was my student, and me. And so I went with this other person to live again in the mountains, and this time in a different place, Kulu. It took me 3 years to solve the problem of her chronic fatigue. The cancer was gone, she wasn't dying, but she was always tired. So I decided to come to Pondicherry. Babaji guided me to this teacher to practice some ancient Tamil martial arts, and as I was doing that, she also started doing it, and she became an instructor in it, and she got her health back. That's when I decided I'm going to break up, and I said I've had enough. I can't take this anymore. The relationship had not solved the problem of loneliness. My student Shweta quit her job and came to Pondicherry to join me as the CEO of my new startup, Yogi Lifestyle Academy. I had lost all interest in any kind of romantic relationship, and I said the problem of loneliness is okay. Loneliness is so much better than having this mental torture of being in a relationship. But then I fell in love again. And this time I went to Goa to be with another woman. Shweta stayed back in Pondicherry. She was running the company, and she really supported me while I did the foolish things in Goa, like trying to set up a house again. I'd spent 9 or 10 lakh rupees on that already. I was trying to make a life with this other woman who turned out to be completely depressed and really no fun. And she was abusive and disrespectful to top it off. When I was in Goa trying to make it work with this woman, Babaji suddenly came into my mind and he said, "Come to the hill nearby." There was a hill where we were staying. I went there and Babaji was standing on top of the mountain, radiant as ever. I was so happy to see him. "Baba, you've come back. Are you going to help me?" "No, you have to suffer some more before you understand suffering. What I'm going to give you is some of the knowledge back." And he touched my forehead, and suddenly I got the knowledge of how to remove karma. And so I started removing my karma of being with this woman. The very next day I was out of Goa. I was back in Pondicherry, where Shweta was staying. So she and I moved to Mysore because we thought it was a much better place to do business. I'd lost all my money again, trying to set up a house in Goa and paying for the martial arts courses of the Pondicherry teacher, for my ex-girlfriend certifications and my certifications, and helping out the teacher who was always needing large amounts of money. So we couldn't afford a large house. We came to Mysore and we took a modest house here, and we set up our office and started to work. Soon we got around 5 employees, and one of them left, but 4 of them continued and are now instructors inside the academy. They teach various things, and I set up shrines of the deities of Triloka Khada here in Mysore. The main Triloka Khada is Babaji's cave, which is in Nepal. The culture of courage Every new moon and full moon, I would just go into silence and do yagna and sit down and beg Babaji to help me remember what he had already taught me. Slowly, my physique started changing and my body went from looking frail to looking like Hanuman. My voice changed and my eyesight improved. All of the health problems that I had started vanishing. I became youthful, and after that, I started to face the problem of not knowing how to run a business anymore. And the forgetting spree, Babaji had taken away all business knowledge too. I really had no idea where to start. So I started going to all these expert marketing gurus and asking them how to teach yoga. I was very clear that I wanted to teach sustainably because I know that if I'm not charging a good amount for it, I can't teach it sustainably. Because there's no way I can afford the ads and all of the tools we have to use. There's so many expenses per month. People underestimate the expense of running a business. I had to figure out how to earn large amounts of money. Shweta pitched in and created a funnel that made us 40 lakh rupees, which sustained us for a while. We were able to pay salaries and help my staff move here. We started teaching martial arts online, which really didn't work here because none of us knew how to market, and then we were struggling hard. It was a hand-to-mouth existence for some time. Then one day, my business knowledge started to return. Things started falling into place. I was able to create a proper offer and a clear idea of whom I want to serve. My dream customer, to serve whom we were in business in the first place. I started to get rid of nightmare customers. I'd wasted a lot of time serving nightmare customers, so many of them. They were so toxic that I had to block them on social media. One day, I buckled down and decided to inspire my team. I put in 16 hours of concentrated work. Our turnover was 52 lakhs out of that. This made me value my time more. 1 minute of my time was worth at least 5,412 rupees. I resolved to make it worth 10,000 by at least the end of this year. My team was inspired. All of them resolved to learn business and get skilled. They started to believe in themselves. These are my loyal students who live here at Mysore with me, and I managed to convey the right knowledge to them just in time. Like a miracle, all the very deep knowledge of Jiva, called Jiva Yoga, is coming back to me now. One of my videos went viral, and suddenly, overnight, I had 18,000 followers, up from just 2,000 followers. And I realized that people really love the stuff that I'm putting out. So this encouraged me to share the original knowledge of Jiva Yoga. Jiva Yoga is the knowledge that empowers human beings to live as the immortal Jiva and not seek identification in body and roles. This makes us magicians, and we are able to consciously manifest reality into existence with our senses. When I didn't know what to teach, I kept experimenting, hoping and waiting that I would get the knowledge of yoga back. Babaji was waiting for me to stop needing to solve the problem of loneliness. He wanted me to manifest the right people in my life and not go chasing others who had no idea what yoga was about. I'm going to succeed because Babaji once told me that defeat happens only when you quit. You fail only after you quit. When things were really difficult, I would keep calm by imagining Babaji asking me, "Have you quit?" Never! I would roar like a lion, and go back to work. Most people don't have this courageous culture of not quitting, and so naturally they fail a lot, and then they stop trying. and then they die. My weakness, and I would say a flaw in my character, was to see loneliness as a problem. But loneliness is really not a problem. It's a distraction from the real problem, which is that we aren't being valued in our environment. And there could be two causes for that. We may be stuck in an environment where we cannot be of any value, or we may be unwilling to be of value. For me, it was the first one, and the first one is harder to solve. You have to escape the environment and bring law and order in all relationships. I had a lot of lawless relationships, and I spent 12 years trying to bring predictable behavior in the people around me. I couldn't control it because I had always approached it wrongly. I used to create my reality very poorly. I used to protect myself by expecting no better from them and planning for the worst. Guess what that made me? Deeply unhappy. The worship of beauty. So I said, screw it. I'm going to only sense everyone else as beautiful and expect them to blossom in beautiful ways. It can be proven without a doubt by anyone that they can create their own outcomes. If we think favorably about the outcomes we want, we set into motion a series of 5 internal senses that shape the 5 great spirits of sky, earth, water, wind, and fire into a physical reality. I wanted to be surrounded by beautiful people, but I was expecting the worst from all of them, and they didn't deliver that reality to me. And I complained of loneliness and kept falling in love to solve that problem. I laugh at this approach now. I only expect people to do beautiful things with their senses. With my senses. I say, how beautiful are they? I smell their beauty. I taste their beauty. I feel their beauty. And I can easily see their beauty. It's just beautiful how beautiful people behave with me now. When I started to live like this, I could feel the blessings of Shiva, Ardhanari, and Shakti in my life. People hold on to ugliness by telling themselves they are protecting themselves from the worst, by expecting the worst and planning for it. How can you ever relax like that? In Sri Vidya, the goddess Shakti is known as Tripura Sundari. Tripura Sundari means beautiful in all the 3 worlds. I came to understand the 3 worlds are the worlds of identity, the world of imagination, and the world of physical reality. And it all starts with the identity we give to ourselves and others. Make it so beautiful that Shiva will notice. We have to wake him up out of his meditation and get him to laugh in delight at how beautiful we have made ourselves. This is called ha-ha-kara. Shiva laughs in delight. Ha 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 ha. Every vibration that emanates from him becomes our nourishment and blessing. The 9 core values of yoga. What I have learned in my 4-decade journey of yoga, it's these values. Never take anything for granted. First, Babaji gave me something very valuable and then he took it away. Be humble. What you have today will not be there tomorrow. Respect your guru and the lineage of gurus before them. Be humble enough to follow instructions because the path is not so easy. Never quit. Shiva wants you to prove yourself before he gives all his bounties to you. This is the path for those who don't mind being tested by Shiva. He doesn't want to give yoga to those who quit. You are Jiva, an immortal creator of physical reality. You should be unshakably lodged in this reality. 5th, create beautiful people and beauty. Building your health, your vitality, beautiful relationships, and your financial security is very important. Also, create youthfulness, vitality, and a zest for life using the tools given to you as a yogi. Siddhis are for doing good. Use them only for good. Number 7, Escape mundane reality and pursuits. Nobody was born to be miserable in stages and die. This is not the purpose of a human birth. The environment is created by your thoughts. You can stop global warming if you can imagine a beautiful earth. And number 9, take full responsibility to create consciously. You have unconsciously created everything you hate, and in a moment of unconsciousness and acceptance, in a moment of consciousness and acceptance, you can recreate it in the most beautiful way